Hello and welcome to Thursday, March 26th. And we left off with Uncle Monty saying, I promise you that if you take time to learn the facts, no harm will come to you in the reptile room. Now, there is a type of situation which occurs all too often and which is occurring at this point in the story, which is called dramatic irony. Simply put, dramatic irony is when a person makes a harmless remark and someone else who hears it knows something that makes the remark have a different, unusually unpleasant meaning. For instance, if you were in a restaurant and said out loud, I cannot wait to eat the veal I ordered, and there were people around you who knew that the veal was poisoned and that you would soon die as soon as you took a bite. This situation would be one of dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is a cruel occurrence, one that is almost always upsetting. And I'm sorry to have it appear in this story, but Violet, Klaus, and Sonny have such unfortunate lives that it was only a matter of time before dramatic irony would rear its ugly head. As you and I listen to Uncle Monty tell the three Baudelaire orphans that no harm will ever come to them in the reptile room, we should be experiencing that strange feeling that accompanies the arrival of dramatic irony. This feeling is not unlike the sinking in one's stomach when one is in an elevator that suddenly goes down, or when you are snug in bed and your closet door suddenly creaks open to reveal the person who has been hiding there. For no matter how safe and happy the three children felt, no matter how comforting Uncle Monty's words were, you and I know that soon Uncle Monty will be dead and the Baudelaires will be miserable once again. Now, during the weeks that followed, however, the Baudelaires had a wonderful time in their new home. Each morning they woke up and dressed in the privacy of their very own rooms, which they had chosen and decorated to their liking. Violet had chosen a room that had an enormous window looking out onto the snake-shaped hedges on the front lawn. She thought such a view might inspire her when she was inventing things. Uncle Monty had allowed her to tack up a large piece of white paper on each wall so that she could sketch her ideas even if they came about in the middle of the night. Klaus had chosen a room with a cozy alcove in it. The word alcove here meaning a very, very small nook, just perfect for reading and sitting. With Uncle Monty's permission, he had carried up a large cushioned chair from the living room and placed it right in the alcove, under a heavy brass reading lamp. And each night, rather than reading in bed, he would curl himself in the chair with a book from Uncle Monty's library, sometimes until morning. Sonny had chosen a room right between Violet and Klaus's and filled it with small, hard objects from all over the house so that she could bite them whenever she felt like it. There were also assorted toys for the incredibly deadly viper so that the two of them could play together whenever they wanted, within reason. But where the Baudelaire orphans most liked to be was the reptile room. Each morning after breakfast they would join Uncle Monty, who would have already started working on the upcoming expedition. Violet sat at a table with the ropes, gears, and cages that made up the different snake traps, learning how they worked, repairing them if they were broken, and occasionally making improvements to make the traps more comfortable for the snakes on their long journey from Peru to Uncle Monty's house. Klaus sat nearby reading the books on Peru that Uncle Monty had, and taking notes on a pad of paper so that they could reference them later. And Sonny sat on the floor biting a long rope into shorter pieces with great enthusiasm. But what the Baudelaire youngsters liked best was learning all about the reptiles from Uncle Monty. And as they worked, he would show them the Alaskan cow lizard, a long green creature that produced delicious milk. They met the dissonant toad, which could imitate human speech in a gravelly voice. Uncle Monty taught them how to handle the inky newt without getting its black dye all over their fingers, and how to tell when the irascible python was grumpy and best left alone. He taught them not to give the green gimlet toad too much water, and to never, under any circumstance, let the Virginian wolf snake near a typewriter. When he was telling them about the different reptiles, Uncle Monty would often segue, a word which here means left the conversation to veer off, to stories from his travels, describing the men, snakes, women, toads, children, lizards he had met on his journeys. And before too long, the Baudelaire orphans were telling Uncle Monty about their own lives, eventually talking about their parents and how much they missed them. Uncle Monty was as interested in the Baudelaire stories as they were in his, and sometimes they got talking so long that they scarcely had time to gobble up their dinner before cramming themselves into Uncle Monty's tiny Jeep, and heading to the movies. One morning, however, when the three children finished their breakfast and went into the reptile room, they found not Uncle Monty, but a note from him. The note read as follows: Dear Bambini, I have gone into town to buy a few last things we need for the expedition. Peruvian wasp, repellent toothbrushes, canned peaches, and a fireproof canoe. It will take a while to find the peaches, so don't expect me back until dinner time. Stefano, Gustav's replacement, will arrive today by taxi. Please make him feel welcome. As you know, it is only 2 days until the expedition, so please work very hard today. Your giddy Uncle Monty. What does giddy mean? Violet asked when they had finished reading the note. Dizzy and excited, Klaus said, having learned the word from a collection of poetry he had read in first grade. I guess he means he's excited about Peru, or maybe he's excited about having a new assistant. Or maybe he's excited about us, Violet said. Kendall, Sonny shrieked, which probably meant, or maybe he's excited about all these things. I'm a little giddy myself, Klaus said. It is really fun to live with Uncle Monty. It certainly is, Violet agreed. And after the fire, I thought we'd never be happy again, but our time here has been wonderful. I still miss our parents, though, Klaus said. No matter how nice Uncle Monty is, I still wish we lived in our real home. Of course, Violet said quickly. She paused and slowly said out loud something that she had been thinking about for the last few days. I think we'll always miss our parents, but I think we can miss them without being miserable all the time. After all, they wouldn't want us to be miserable. Remember the time, Klaus said wistfully, when we were bored one rainy afternoon and we all painted our toenails bright red? Yes, Violet said, grinning, and I spilled some on the yellow chair. Archo, Sonny said quietly, which probably meant something like, and the stain really never came out. The Baudelaire orphans smiled at each other, and without a word began to do the day's work. And for the rest of the morning they worked quietly and steadily, realizing that their contentment here at Uncle Monty's house did not erase their parents' death, not at all, but at least it made them feel better after feeling so sad for so long. It is unfortunate, of course, that this quiet, happy moment was the last one the children would have for quite some time, but there's nothing anyone can do about it now. Just when the Baudelaires were beginning to think about lunch, they heard a car pull up in front of the house and toot its horn, and to the children it signaled the arrival of Stefano. To us, it should signal the beginning of more misery. I expect that's the new assistant, Klaus said, looking up from the big Peruvian book of small Peruvian snakes. I hope he's as nice as Monty. Me too, Violet said, opening and shutting a toad trap to make sure it worked smoothly. It would be unpleasant to travel to Peru with someone who was boring or mean. Gerja, Sonny shrieked, which probably meant something like, well, let's go find out what Stefano's like. The Baudelaires left the reptile room and walked out the front door to find a taxi parked next to the snake-shaped hedges. A very tall, thin man with a long beard and no eyebrows over his eyes was getting out of the back seat carrying a black suitcase with a shiny silver padlock. I'm not going to give you a tip, the bearded man was saying to the driver of the taxi, because you talk too much. Not everyone wants to hear about your new baby, you know. Oh, hello there. I am Stefano, Dr. Montgomery's new assistant. How do you do? Well, how do you do, Violet said, and she approached him, and there was something about his wheezy voice that seemed vaguely familiar. How do you do, Klaus said, and he looked up at Stefano, and there was something about his shiny eyes that looked quite familiar. Huda? Sonny shrieked. Stefano wasn't wearing any socks, and Sonny, crawling on the ground, could see his bare ankle between his pant cuff and his shoe. There, on his ankle, was something that was most familiar of all. The Baudelaire orphans all realized the same thing at the same time and took a step back as you might from a growling dog. This man wasn't Stefano, no matter what he called himself. The three children looked at Uncle Monty's new assistant from head to toe and saw that he was none other than Count Olaf. He may have shaved off one long eyebrow and grown a beard over his scraggly chin, but there was no way he could hide the tattoo of an eye on his ankle. Dun 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 dun. Next time, Chapter 4. Quizzes. If you have any problems, here are the 2 pointers I sent to you on Google Stream. Number 1, anytime you want to reset your score, just hit the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, and then just hit Reset Score. And then number 2, how many problems should I do? It's up to you. Kids are usually sending in about 20. One thing we found out was unless you stop, it'll just keep generating more and more problems. So whenever you feel like being done, just hit the upper 3 dots, sign in your progress report, and then just send me the code, and then I'll know what you're doing. Okay? Have a good Thursday.